Hail and well met, friends. I am Lord Gregory Oxendine, late of His Majesty's Lunar Light Infantry. These days I pass my time as an explorer and space adventurer. For the benefit of those who may be watching or listening via the Twitching Ether's Other Doc channel, my friends and I have gathered at a most delightful soiree, and we shall now be playing a game of stories called The Extraordinary Adventures of Baron Munchausen. Apparently devised and written by the legendary Baron himself, and recorded by James Wallis, a much-renowned designer of gamery. Let us go round, and for those, again, the benefit of those who may be watching or listening, to introduce ourselves, I shall start with the Contessa. Hello.
Oh, good evening. I'm the Contessa Lucrezia Sofia Ferravanti. My late husband was the Conte of Siracusa, and I'm just enjoy traveling so much that now it is time to enjoy some relaxation with some friends.
Indeed.
Some vino.
Quite. We should probably order rather another rack of it. It seems to be getting a bit low. Now, Viscount, hello there. Why don't you introduce yourself?
Indeed. My name is Viscount of Dreams, Alexander Nevermind, patron of the arts.
Excellent. I hear that I hear your compositions are legendary.
Indeed, they are most magnificent.
Good, quite. Well, perhaps we shall have one a bit later, but in the meantime, let's see. Graf, good to see you. I've not seen you in some time.
Indeed, it's been a while. I'm Graf Emil von Rodenstein, alchemist extraordinaire.
Excellent. I cannot wait to hear some of your more legendary stories. And Baron, good to see you here. Hello.
Yes. I'm Baron Thurfton Cronley IV. Don't let the number fool you. I'm the fifth in my line, and it is a pleasure being here, for as far as I deem it to be a pleasure.
Excellent, good. Well, one can only hope that one's pleasures do not run out. Well then,
Here.
Before we proceed, above all else, it is incumbent upon us as we play to make certain we are all comfortable and mindful of each other. So we shall be using the X card, the N card, and the O card. If we reach a point that crosses a line for one of us, any of us can send an X via our audiovisual apparati, or anywhere else, or make an X symbol, and we shall back up and do something else. If something happens that we are agreeable to having in the narrative, but we don't desire a graphic description of it, we can send an N via our apparati, and we shall fade to black on it. It will be part of the story, but we won't go into detail. Finally, if we're exploring a topic or area of play that's particularly intense for us, but we wish to keep going anyway, we can send an O in the chat to let everyone know that we're all right and that we have license to continue piling on the drama. Something else we can do is to send an O with a question mark following it when we're moving into a difficult topic, or we say, we do something, and then think perhaps it might have been too much. Then everyone else can respond to that again with an X, an N, or an O to let us know if any corrections need be made. So, in short, the way this game is played, quite simply, we've gathered here to tell our tales. We each have a purse. We've strange labels upon them, I'm not sure. But in any case, we've each a purse of coins equal to our the number of players here. Once we get going, we shall. It's incumbent on whoever is starting. We'll turn to someone and ask them to tell a tale that we've heard about them. It can be any number of things, and then they proceed to tell that story. It's quite simple. Now, there may be points at which some of us may feel the need to leap in with corrections to those tales, at which point we would then proffer a coin as our wager that we place, stating simply that we perhaps remembering things a bit differently, or there is some detail that is perhaps different. Perhaps the 10th moon of Saturn was held by the French at that time. That thing. If the teller of the tale chooses to incorporate it, they may then take that coin and put it in their purse, and continue on as they are incorporating that change. If, however, they wish to reject it, they may then place their own counter wager, as it were, paying back, and stating that that is a mistake. And then, of course, those coins go back to the purse of the one who made the suggestion. Of course, the one who made the suggestion can continue to counterbid if one so desires, up to the limit of their purse. One coin at a time is how this is done. Then, once some medium is reached, the story continues. It shall, at some point, we've been given 5-10 minutes, something along those lines, to tell our tales. And upon that point, then once we are ended, once we have each told our tale, then we get to vote with the remaining contents of our purses on which tale is the best. Each in turn giving our coins to their bounty. And that's really how the game is played. It's very simple. Have we any questions prior to commencement? No? All right, very good. So, who wishes to ask the first question? I mean, if need be, I shall do it. It's
Don't be shy.
All right, very well, very well. Well then, tell me, Graf. I've always wanted to. I've been rather fascinated by this. I have always wanted to hear the story of how it was that you split the entire island of Ireland in twain and then stitched it back together. Could you tell us how that happened?
Oh, it was by accident. I was in Ireland, and there were various things going on, and I had sequestered away in a cottage in the middle of nowhere to look after my experiments that had to be carefully controlled, and also just in case something went wrong, it was very important that there was no one around who could possibly be injured by such an thing that would go wrong. So I had the main cottage where I lived, and I had that was the outbuilding in which I had set up my laboratory, and things were going well. The humors were pleasant, and we and experiments were flowing quite nicely when there was a sudden thunderstorm. Quite outrageous, because the skies had been blue, but within seconds, maybe a minute, there was this huge thunderstorm, and this cottage, being quite exposed, was sadly functioned as a lightning attractor.
Now, my understanding, Graf, if I may be so bold, is that by this point the Druids had perfected the control of the local weather, so I don't understand how there could have been great thunderstorms at that point.
Ah, the Druids. Well, they, being Druids and pagans and heathens, and who, not up to understanding what modern science is all about, deliberately did this to what is the word I am looking for? Help me out here.
Foil?
Not your foil is a good one.
Disrupt?
Undermine?
No. Sabotage.
Tickle.
That's what I was looking for. And apparently also the site I had chosen for my cottage was one of their sacred sites. So their desire to get rid of me culminated into this attack by lightning. Now, not only did the thatched roof of the cottage of the laboratory catch fire, but it also caused a chain reaction within my experiment going the wrong way. I saw what was going on and also saw that there was no way I could possibly stop this because the lightning bolts just kept hitting and the chain reaction kept happening. So I packed my essentials into a bag and hightailed it out of there towards the south. When I heard this massive, this extraordinary rending sound of like accompanied by earth tremors that shook me to my core. And I turned around and watched, and I saw a mighty, mighty crack had opened all along the landscape. And I saw the northern part of the countryside slowly drift away. Now, obviously, this is local experiments and all that, and the droids, they were nasty, but this affected the whole island, and I couldn't possibly let this island and its good people drift apart from each other. So I consulted my books, still keeping an eye on the ever-widening gap between the two halves, where by now possibly half a mile or so, and flipping ever faster through my books. And geology is sadly not my strong point, but my good friend and servant names are always so difficult.
One has so many servants; it can be difficult
Yes,
to keep
indeed.
track.
My good servant Benjamin. He has the extraordinary ability to stretch his limbs ever as far as he can possibly want. And so I set him up at our side of the gap with pikes driven into the ground he could all hold on to on this side. and then he cast his arms away across the gap to the other side, where he gripped 2 trees and pulled the 2 parts together again. Now, this obviously took quite some time, but eventually the 2 parts joined again. And while Benjamin was doing this, I concocted the best glue I've ever made, the best rock glue. This took, again, several hours, but eventually I was able to make enough glue to put into the now exceedingly small gap all along.
If I may just ask,
Yes.
what of the what of the subterranean firbolg that live beneath the earth there in that region? Were they not disturbed at all by what was going on?
Oh, there was lots of screaming going on, obviously, but they were similarly scared of certainly being deprived of their hiding places and the sunlight shining on them. So they hid ever deeper into their caves and stayed away from the cracks. And especially as I then managed to glue the width island back together. It took all my resources and a lot of my strength, and obviously with the help of my good servant Benjamin. Yes, and if you go there now, you will still be able to see, if you look closely, a line just across the island.
Most delightful, most delightful.
Why, thank you.
May I pour you another round, Graf?
Of course.
Very good. Who's next?
To the, I think it's my choice, isn't it?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. Now, Contessa, why don't you give us the tale of how you escaped the Doge's palace with his finest jewelry,
Well then, it's
stark
not...
naked.
Well, no. I will acknowledge the fact that it was there. I will acknowledge the fact that I was underdressed at the time. But part of that was entirely the Doge's fault. Now, admittedly, it was Carnivale. It was a beautiful event. Has anyone been to Venice for Carnivale? It takes over the city. It's a beautiful thing that just, you have dancing and singing, and you have, well, if you've never been to St. Mark's Square, there are 3 cafes on St. Mark's Square. I only attend Fiorello's. I don't deal with the Austrians. Whoever wants to deal with the Austrians can have them. I'm an Italian. Well, more accurately, I'm a Sicilian. I don't need to have the Austrians coming into my country and trying to take things that don't belong to them.
Quite right.
Somebody else take the Habsburgs. There are way too many of them.
Where would one put them?
Maybe if we packed them tightly enough, we could send them to Jupiter and let Jupiter do it.
I do know a shipping company that does deal in bulk.
Oh, that would be fun. We'll make a note of that. But it was Carnivale, and I had been, after my late husband died, God rest his soul, I had been traveling around Europe having fun, or entertaining myself and introducing myself to many, many people that were very important. And I had been coming to Venice and decided I would attend for Carnivale. It was a proper Carnivale. I was about there for 2 weeks before the main event. And the Doge always hosts a massive masquerade for the last night of Carnival. It is in the Doge's Palace, which is, if you've seen St. Mark's Square, it's to the right and closer to the water than St. Mark's itself. It's absolutely gorgeous, except for now there are tourists who seem to think that feeding pigeons is a good thing. Don't feed the pigeons, they're just rats. Get rid of them. You can get rid of the rats. Just go away. But you go into this beautiful palace. It is absolutely gorgeous. And I was choosing to attend with my very, very dear friend, Captain Jonathan von Brandt. Now, the captain is a late of the French Foreign Legion, and he is a fabulous aeronautical design and sailor and flyer, and he does wonderful things as both, bodyguard and other. But I had been heard that the Doge made bets that no one could achieve the ability to. He places a wine glass on the chandelier in the middle of the palace, right above the top of the main ballroom, and he says anyone who could manage to drink the wine glass could therefore have one of his set of fine jewelry. I said that would be entirely easy and I could do that in 5 minutes, and he said no, that wouldn't be possible. And I said, well, put your money where your mouth is. And I said, if I win, I want the whole thing. And he said, no, why would I give you the whole thing? Because, the Doge seems to think that this is a thing. I think this is just a problem that he has with his late ex-wife, who had left him for the tailor, the one from Savile Row in London. They ran away with, whatever. But he's dealing with his problems. Who knows? But he's a Venetian. What do you expect? And anyways, you go and so I said, fine, I will do this. So I said, it was a beautiful gown. And, I have an aesthetic, right? Unfortunately for my late husband, God rest his soul, I had this beautiful black on black ball gown. It was 3 tiers of black velvet and another 2 tiers of black satin and lace on top of it. 4 layers. It took up 3 feet of space in the ballroom. It was absolutely gorgeous, but I had purposely designed it because I am a pragmatic individual, and you never know when you might have to leave somewhere in a hurry. Also, the corset was built so that it was 16 boning instead of 12 that you normally have, and those extra 4 are designed so that I can have removable pieces. So I designed this dress, and it's one of my favorite dresses. It's absolutely gorgeous. My friend Isalina and we plotted this dress together. So I had designed this dress, so all of the layers are stitched together, but they spin out. And so I had my very, very dear friend, Captain Von Brandt, and we were waltzing up on the 2nd floor balcony right at the top. And I said, right at the right moment, you're going to spin me out, and I'm going to spin, and you're going to hold this piece. And he said, well, what am I going to hold this piece for? I was like, don't worry about it, you'll see. And don't panic if I go flying, it'll be great. I have entirely planned this whole thing out, which I will admit that Jonathan usually is very good with helping me with these things, but sometimes he gets this look on his face like, why am I doing this? Are you sure you've planned this? I'm like, yes, don't worry about it, it'll be fine. You're good at shooting things and stabbing things. I'm very good at getting where I want to be when I want to.
But, Contessa, what about all the wine Captain Jonathan had to drink?
Oh, well,
Didn't cloud that his judgment?
Not any more than usual. I mean, really, why would I do this without multiple glasses of wine? Also, the good Captain Von Brandt isn't actually human in our definition of the term. He's an elf, if you can believe that. He's one of the fair folk. He comes from beyond the veil. It's the ears that give it away, and the long hair, and his constitution is slightly better than you'd expect. I know, I've tried. There were many, many nights that we've pushed that thing.
Yeah, notoriously difficult to outdrink. I remember that
extremely. And I may have gone I think we were at bottle number 3 or 4 by that point, which is probably why I wasn't as perfectly on point as I thought I was. But by then we spun out. So we're spinning, right? And it's a beautiful waltz, and I take up the large center of the room. Everyone's looking at me, as they should be. And so we're spinning. And I said, point, this is the point. And then he spins and he holds, and the dress spins out as a long layer. So I've got 16, there are 4 and 6 and 8. So there are about 16 extra yards per row. And it was gorgeous, 150 feet. And I go spinning right out to the top of the chandelier. And I make a beautiful, full triple somersault, and I land on top of the chandelier, and I'm sitting there having a drink and the beautiful thing, and I look at the Doge and I say, so I want the whole thing. And he goes, that doesn't count. I'm like, what do you mean that doesn't count? I'm sitting on the top of your chandelier having the glass of wine that you put on the top of the chandelier, which, by the way, it was not as good as everything else that he was serving, and I have very much questions about what he's doing with the cheap shit on top of the chandelier. But anyways, can you believe? And then anyways, so I said, fine, it'll be a thing, it'll be whatever. I said, if you don't want to give them to me after I prove that I won in front of all of these people, I'll just take what I want. And he's like, no, you couldn't do that. And I'm like, watch me. And I decided, well, that there was okay, so you have to picture it. There's everyone dancing, everyone's having fun, but the Doge's sister is I don't want to judge, but the woman is a little bit larger than I am, kind of significantly. So she had this very nice, ornate couch that she was sitting on to watch the dancing right at the side of the ballroom, and I said, that's where my couch is that's where my landing is going to be. So then I waved at the captain and let them know that this was going to be a thing. So he was holding on, and then I somersaulted off the couch, and as I was doing that, I hit the Doge on the way down, and then managed to take the keys off of him for the lockbox that he had displayed in the middle of this ballroom, right at the top, so that he can show off all of this jewelry that isn't his. It's all his ex-wife's, but she ran off with the tailor, so what do you expect? It's all just sitting there. And then she goes off, and I land perfectly with the keys in my hand, seated right next to the Doge's sister. And I said, do you want me to make him a big mess? And she said, well, I'm kind of pissed at him anyways. And I said, well, then watch this. So then I took the keys, opened the lockbox, and picked up a bottle of champagne and said, Captain, meet me outside.
I have a question, if I may.
Oh, of course. Lord
Was not your escape from this place at all hindered by the fact that, if I recall correctly, at that time, had the Doge not used Atlantean devices to relocate his place under the water?
Oh, well, he sinks it, he raises it, he sinks it, he raises it, it goes up and down, and everybody's getting very seasick by the whole thing. This is why I don't like Venice, keep one level of the water or not on the water, just choose. I'm okay with being underwater or top of the, whatever. And then, so anyways, you are correct that he had sunk the vessel. But this is why we have a good Jonathan Van Brandt. He's a beautiful, wonderful sailor, and he runs all of these things. And I said, meet me outside. And so he had already brought the submersible. It's beautiful. Have you seen like Lord, the Nautilus from Lord, what's his,
Yes. He changes names frequently. I can't
Nemo,
remember.
Lord Nemo,
Yes,
Lord
Nemo.
Yes. Nemo in his, Nautilus. It's beautiful. It's long and it looks like a squid. Well, I may have had a very pleasant conversation with Lord Nemo at one point or another that led to me getting keys to a very nice little mini submersible that he gifted me. It's very cute. It looks like a little calamari, and it's about, 3 people big enough, and the good captain has learned to sail it very well. It's very maneuverable, you might say, in just the perfect places. So we had parked that outside, and I, of course, the good captain is an elf, so he can hold his breath forever, and I had learned to hold my breath a whole lot. So I may have left most of the dress behind, the corset intact, and waltzed out with the the crown and the tiara, the seal of the symbol of Venice, and most of the jewelry of the Doge, and, well, his ex-wife, really, and waltzed out with the bottle of champagne, and went swimming off into the Nautilus, which made it a little bit more difficult than I will understand. So now, of course, it wasn't that I was wholly stark naked at the time. It was mostly that most of the dress got left behind in the corset, and the under things were still there. But that's okay. It led to a lot of fun things that happened.
If there are no further
Marvelous.
Yes, it's delightful. That was a delight. That was excellent, Contessa.
Oh, well, I do enjoy telling stories about all of the fun things I get to do across the city. Well,
Always nice to hear about the Doge's nose getting twisted. I quite liked that fellow.
he's a serious problem, and I can't wait until, well, his sister may or may not be poisoning him. I don't know. I can't swear to that one. But you didn't hear it from me, right?
Of course.
But, Baron, I heard the most delightful rumor lately, and I wanted to know if you could confirm it to be true or not. Whatever did you and the Tsarina of Russia have to do in the Amber room that led to a giant crack in the St. Petersburg Palace?
Oh, yes. Therein lies quite the tale. Well, as many of you know, of course, St. Petersburg lies upon a tremendous fault line, which may or may not have something to do with one of the other Cromleys in my line. I can either deny or possibly further refute that. But I was there on just a regular visit, as I do from time to time, checking up on things, making sure everything is right where I left it, as is the case. But that's another story for another time. When, of course, I ran into the Tsarina. We're long friends. We met quite some time ago, but that is yet a completely different story. And she said that I needed to escort her, in a manner of speaking, into the Ember Room in St. Petersburg, because there was something very unusual going on in there at the time. I wasn't quite sure exactly what she meant until I got in there and I saw the quite possibly the most remarkable, extraordinary, largest astrolabe I've ever seen. I wasn't quite sure how it got there. She said it fell from the moon of all places, and I said that's preposterous. They don't have astrolabes that big on the moon, as everyone knows.
But of course.
And not that size, certainly.
The moon is an astrolabe.
But yes, quite. 1 second. And so, with the Tsarina's help, of course, I went about doing what we could to try to make the appropriate adjustments and see about how we could use this to perhaps make things a bit more, shall we say, decorative for the Ember Room itself. The thing was so large that we couldn't just hurl it back up to the moon. So why not just spruce it up and perhaps throw a gala event around it? Why not? Oh,
I mean that I've heard that the astrolabes from these planetary bodies, specifically the lunar ones, are notoriously built of very hard asteroid metals. How did you manage to break it into pieces?
Well, you may be actually thinking of some from another astral body other than the moon, because as we know, the ones from the moon are made from very lightweight cheese, of course. It's easy to get those confused.
Understand.
But that being the case, it made it perfect for this event we would, of course, throw in the Ember Room. Why not? We have plenty of cheese. And despite things being what they were, I managed to bring with me quite a few casks of fine wine from my various travels and such. So we went about trying to, as I said, trying to figure out how to spruce this up. I mean, who wouldn't want to dine upon wine and an astrolabe of cheese, I ask you?
But what wine does one use for an astrolabe for lunar cheeses? Is that a white or a red or a champagne?
Well, you would think perhaps a champagne or a white, but I find the red to be quite exquisite on the astrolabian cheese, as it were.
No.
But surely, Baron, we all know that the moon is very, very cold, and the moon cheese is obviously conditioned to be at its peak on the moon. Now, transferring that to Earth would mean that the cheese would melt immediately. How was that prevented from happening?
Well, it's funny you should ask that. See, it seems that it had been packed in some very it seems that it had been packed in some ice itself from some sort of perhaps a comet or something. Maybe that's how it was propelled from the moon, which certainly explained the amount of water that we were standing in as we were looking at the astrolabe. So the cheese was actually a nice amount of softness, as it were, but still a little chilled because of the ice. That was a very good point, Graf. But I knew we had to do something, so I had to get rid of this. We had to do something to get rid of all this water that was here. And I suggested, if freezing it made it easier to transport from the moon, then perhaps freezing it again will make it easier to transport out of here. And so, of course, the Tsarina had it in her disposal to be able to bring in quite a bit of things to help us freeze over this water that was here. And of course, one thing led to another. And as you know, when the water is frozen, it tends to expand, and thus led to these the cracks in the Ember Room in St. Petersburg. It was quite unfortunate, but there was plenty of wine and cheese for everyone. I trust that satisfies your question about that rumor.
Of course.
I think you were quite lucky to get away with that. Normally, the Bat Patriarch of the Moon is rather controlling of any technology that leaks out.
Well,
having fought him for a number of years up there, I can tell you it's not a delight to have to deal with.
Well, I also heard the rumor that particular patriarch of the lunar was having an affair with one of the Tsarina's younger sisters. So there's that possibility as well.
That old devil. You wouldn't think it, but then again, I only knew him briefly from having dueled him. But it's simply it's fascinating. Oh, my apologies. Was that were you finished, Baron?
Oh, yes, quite right.
Quite good.
Wonderful.
So, in that case, Lord Gregory,
indeed,
as it were, how is it that you seem to bear a striking resemblance to the Sphinx of the Egyptian desert?
Ah. Well, that is an unusual set of circumstances. I'd not kind of rather remarkable coincidence, one would think, but. Well, there were a few things that happened a few years back that it caused some degree of alarm. You see, it was on one of our more recent a little while ago. I had my ship, the Basilisk, refitted with a disappointment drive. The way this simply works is that as we propel ourselves from planet to planet, we do so by finding things that are disappointing. At that time, I believe I was orbiting Mercury at the time. And there was some unfortunate goings on there with some of the. Some of a collective that has taken root there that sadly were not very receptive to the my explanations for the bill that I had run up there. They're very fine, they're very fine winery and bordello there. And unfortunately, we had to leave in rather a hurry. Well, so disappointed were they in my behavior, we just took off like a shot. It seems that my servant Anthony did not properly plot the course at that point. We were returning to Earth. We were meant to be to be rendezvousing back in with to play whist back in England. But unfortunately, he's got things rather a bit off. He gets a little tense from time to time, Anthony does. Good man, late of the Navy, but does have some degree a tendency to panic when things get away from him. So we landed in Egypt. Now, when I say landed, I am rather stretching the definition of the term. It is more due to, I think it's not so much a landing as it was an impact. The impact being with, as it turned out, is we had this great difficulty. The ship was upside down. We knew not what we were doing. Thankfully, we had strapped in. We were all right. But on clambering out, I did note that it seemed that there was what looked like the pieces of a very large stone face near us. I was sitting there in the desert. I wasn't rather certain as to what its origin was, and then I had a bit of a look around, and it seemed that at that point the Sphinx was faceless. And then it rather struck me rather hard, what we had just struck rather hard. So as a result, of course, we needed to fix this. This was, of course, we could not simply let the Sphinx. But
Lord Gregory, the Sphinx being violated, desecrated in that way, of having her face removed, wouldn't that immediately have triggered the curse of the Sphinx and awoken the ancient warriors waiting in their sandy graves for just this very moment?
You are too correct, sir. You are too correct, Graf. That was rather an impediment, unfortunately. The warriors were rather upset. We saw them approaching, so we did what anyone of good standing does. We hopped into our buggy and we hightailed it as quickly as we possibly could to attempt to evade capture from them. They are rather dogged and, of course, undead. So as a result, it is very difficult to they're very difficult to lose. However, crossing upon our crossing of the nearby Nile River, we did just manage it. It was a rather heated chase that took some time. Hours, it seems, perhaps days. It's hard to remember. But
it seems to me, though, that it would have been quite hard to cross the Nile, because at that time of the year, isn't it completely overrun by crocodiles?
It absolutely is. It was not an easy crossing. The good thing, however, is that while Anthony is often sometimes panicked in difficult situations, he is rather good with animals. So it was, as we were making our crossing, our buggy being converted to a submersible as it does, he was able to. There's this trick, you see, that you get into when you begin to wrestle with a crocodile. I'm not sure if you've seen it done, but what you do is you get a plank of wood or something else similarly, nothing that's going to hurt it, but something that's going to hurt the animal, but something that it can bite down on. That you get it in its mouth, and you get it to roll over, as they do naturally, but at the correct moment, you must reach down and stroke its stomach. And that will let it know that you are friends with it. So Anthony did this. Seeing him doing that, I did the same on the other side. And so we managed to, as it were, ride forth across the Nile on a buoy of reptilian friendship. Upon making the opposite side, the difficulty was in hiring contractors. That was truly the thing that we had a little trouble with. Took us a little time, as we had to go and track down in the nearest settlement someone who could carve an entire face at merely at a moment's notice. Not easy to find in those parts, I can tell you. However, we did ultimately set upon just the sculptor. She's quite good. Normally she works in smaller medium, but she is quite the artist. I'm rather trying to see if I can possibly remember her name. It's been some time, but she is quite good. She works mostly in sandstone, as that's rather a lot of that in the area. Let's see. Nath, named after Nath. That was her name. Nath. Yeah. Lived by the water. Very good at sculpting. So we managed, after a bit of an exchange of both words and a considerable exchange of coin, managed to hire her services. We then took upon our task at once to ferry her back via the water this time. We didn't want to come in where they'd be expecting us. Ferry us back to where the Sphinx was located. We crept forward, watching all the time to make sure that the warriors would not spot us. And it was very touch and go for a while, I can tell you that. We had to engage stealth, which is a quality of which I do not have prodigiously, but one which we did just manage, seeing as they were rather chasing anything that set foot out there. And we do have the occasional tourist that appears, and so that was of some assistance.
And well, then, my dear Lord Gregory, whatever did you do with the spirit of the Sphinx, the lady who it is said would conquer any man she chose and make it her cat toy?
Ah. Well, it's quite interesting, as it seems she was quite entertained by my ability to dance. It's something I'd learned some time ago in. As one learns these things at school, as one gets a proper rounded education. And I merely bowed to her. I asked her if she wished this dance, as she came at me, all fangs and destruction. And she accepted. And so we danced, as Antony played the mandolin, and Neith forged the face of the Sphinx, reforged it. Unfortunately, it seems after the fact I'd realized that Nath was rather a bit overly grateful at the compensation I provided. It seems she decided that what we wanted was my own likeness rather than the original. I feel perhaps some have said that it's an improvement, but I dare not say. At least it does now have a rather striking nose. And of course, as for the spirit and I, well, you may have seen her come in with me earlier this evening.
Ah, very fine.
Well,
A most fantastic tale.
thank you. Many thanks, of course.
Quite enjoyable.
Oh yes, yes, yes.
Well then, I believe we've but one there's but one tale left to tell. Viscount, could you care to regale us with the story of how it was that for approximately 1 hour you managed to turn off the sun?
That was the Viscount.
I believe it was.
I must hear this.
It was quite a experience. Let me
I lost
tell
an
you.
important experiment with that.
Yes, that was by design. I don't know if you've seen what's been going on in the world. A number of mysterious creatures with wondrous powers have seemed to crop up in all sorts of places, oftentimes mixing very different elements. Sheer force, but ultimately very friendly, forming partnerships with specially gifted trainers, if you will. And I did form a bond with a very small but cute yellow mouse. All it says is Kachu. And, we set out on a journey to be the very best, like no one ever was. And so, upon our journeys, meeting all sorts of fantastic people, various personalities, and collecting our due merits, along with a killer soundtrack as composed by yours truly, we encountered a very, very magnificent creature that could not actually be tamed. And it was very much Judgment Day bringing, with its sheer mental powers. And it was casting aside all these trainers and mystical beasts left and right. For it had not known love. And others.
I heard that there were two of them.
Yes, there were two of them.
That they were. How did you manage to deal with both of them at the same time? I must know.
Oh, well, you see, apparently this very angry beast, I believe we had called him U2, was actually cloned from an original beast, which I believe they had called You. So we had You and U2, and You was a much more benevolent being, who always sought the good in man. So while You and U2 had squared off, I gathered an army of other creatures to help sabotage U2's doomsday device. However, there was this brother and sister combo accompanied by their cat, who had accidentally stumbled upon the scene with a giant phallic ship of some sort, not unlike Lord Gregory's ships. And such a thing had caused this chain reaction that had overwhelmed all of us there. And that had actually caused the sun to shut off for an hour.
Now, my understanding, Viscount, is that ever since an earlier incident with the Mercurian, betwixt the Mercurians and the inhabitants of Mars, that the is that the Martian Navy patrols regularly and round the sun and has safeguards in place to prevent any tampering. How did they get around those?
Well, you see, I had not initially heard about these armies and such, but I would want to say that there had been another crew on a spaceship, and this was just sheer circumstance. But they had actually been in the process of slinging their ship around the sun in order to solve another crisis that happened in a temporal alternate reality. And as such...
yes, I heard about that, I think. It was something about whales, wasn't it?
It was about...
right.
I was going to say, that sounds like one whale of a tale right there.
I know. It's...
I have another question. So the ship, this particular phallic ship that was very, you were describing, Lord like Gregory's, is that the one that's, well, I don't want to spread tales, but I've heard that there were so many people getting sick with this thing they're calling syphilis. Is that coming from that ship or someone else's?
Yes. That was a thing that did occur for the brother and sister. Or I'm sorry, I do not believe they were brother and sister, but the pair had come out and they were very free about their expression of love. And, the other trainers there, having bearing witness to the end of the world, had some last minute misgivings. And of course, being as that I am such a charismatic and dashing figure and could not help but be within the moment. There was much orgying going on at that time, and it would turn out later that those people who had in fact relations with, I believe their name was Jesse and James, would later discover that they had these wondrous powers, thanks to a thing I believe they had called midichlorians. And as such, they were able to tap into a very dark and primal power, not unlike U2's. But anyway, I digress. So what actually did happen at this point was that after all this destruction and partying, as if it were the year 1999, the U2 was moved by the very acts of humanity and had used its prodigious power to recast a tumescent light into the sun and restore balance to our universe.
Most excellent, most excellent. You should write a song about that particular celebration at some point.
Yes, marvelous.
Well then, that completes our rounds of storytelling. So now the time comes to vote. I shall, with my coins, I shall declare that I think of all of these tales, and they were all quite excellent, and it is a difficult decision, but I feel that the finest tale that I have heard tonight belongs to the Contessa Lucretia. And thus I give the contents of the purse to her.
I will have to agree. I do find her wily ways to be very much delight, and look forward to perhaps sharing an adventure sometime.
I have to agree as well. It's just the amount of both intrigue and also technical expertise in the design of her dress.
Thank you.
Well, I must say that I was distracted by whatever was going on in the story. So, yeah, sure. Here's some coins for the princess.
Well, if you're all going to vote for me, I was going to say that I quite enjoyed the Viscount's tale because it's always a joy to have the Viscount in pleasure. So I will vote for the Viscount just to make things simple. Why does this not? Here, why can't I?
Do you wish assistance?
Nope, figured it out.
Very good.
Right? There we go. Cool.
Excellent. Well then, it seems we have a clear winner. Contessa, it's
Bravo!
to you to fetch the next round of drinks then.
Actually, Captain Von Brandt's already on it. There's another bottle coming.
Quite excellent. Good. Well done. Well, that brings us to the end. Now. Okay, I'm going to step out of character now. Thank you all very much for playing. That was delightful. That was a lot of fun. I've never actually gotten to play the Baron Munchausen game, and so that I'm so glad that finally managed to check that off my bucket list. That was excellent. That was very cool.
If I could just interject for a moment, my other idea was to basically use the plot to the Fast and the Furious.
That was awesome.
I could see how that could work.
Yeah, that was great. Okay.
Oh man, that was very cool. It's very rare one sees examples of also just in general to wax about Baron Munchausen just itself, the series of stories. For a second, it's rare to find examples of the tall tale in this country that come from outside of this country, because normally it's the Paul Bunyan stuff, but it does go back a ways, and so it is neat to see to see a game that.
Well, considering how short your history is.
Oh yeah, no, that's right. No, it's in the U.S. 100 years is a long time, and in Europe 100 miles is a long way. We understand.
That is an excellent comparison. That is really good.
But for those of you who might have been wondering, I'm Jim, and we're going to go around and just finally actually introduce everybody. But then feel free to, as we're doing our outros here, to let us know where we can find you and any thoughts you had about this game. I'm going to go. I'll go counterclockwise. So I'm actually going to start with the new face to this channel. I will start with John. Hey. How you doing?
Hey, I'm doing good. So I'm John. You can find me. I'm usually as either on Twitter, I'm at CobalDude, or even on Twitch, I'm CobalDude. But I don't think I really have anything on Twitch yet. Or do I? I'm also the host of a gaming podcast called the Swarmcast Podcast, which you can find that at swarmcastpodcast.com.
Cool. Awesome. And do you have any thoughts about the game today?
No thought. No thoughts about. No. I've always loved this game. It's a fun game. It's always a little interesting when you're playing with a bunch of people that you absolutely do not know. That makes it a little bit challenging.
Oh no, understandable. I think this is actually the first time that we've played any game together.
You may be right.
Yeah, I mean, we've been to the same cons. I don't think we actually ever made it into the same game. I can't remember. Maybe we did once. I can't remember.
If we did, it was like late at night, and we were probably both like
might not have been, or it might have been a board game maybe or something. I can't remember.
Right. We might have been con zombies at that point. So.
It's entirely possible. There's a lot of that going around. But thank you so much for coming and playing. that was awesome. Finally got you on the channel. Yay!
Ha-ha!
And let's go around to Ozzy. Hey.
Hello, I'm Ozzy. I'm Carl on Twitter, and I do things like this. I don't have my own channel. Well, I do, but there's currently nothing on it. I play regularly on Tuesdays at 8 p.m. UK time on Capricorn Cross's channel, and we play The Curse of Strahd, famous D&D module. And on Friday evenings, 9 p.m. British time, we play Masks of Nyarlathotep on Skrekov's channel, which is the big classic Call of Cthulhu campaign that's just recently been updated and rewritten. And we are at a reasonably early beginning. We've just started in New York with the second session in New York.
Awesome, excellent. Any thoughts about the game today?
Oh yes, I've been probably in this group person who played this game not for the longest but the earliest, because I played this game with the designer James Wallis when it wasn't even out yet at various cons in the UK in the mid-90s. It would have been 97 at Loughborough University when the UK Gen Con was there. I think was the first time James brought it out when we played it in the bar at the Student Union.
Nice.
And so from then, when I still had a regular group over here, it was sort of a regular party game you would do, because you don't need a setup, you just need a couple of coins, and you don't need a space on the table or whatever, and you tell tall tales. And it's always a good game, and so I was very happy that this came back up again and I was able to join this. So thanks for that, Jim.
Yay, so glad to have you. And Anino, hey.
Hey, how's it going? My name's Anino. You can find me on the Twitter at Anino Gaming. I don't have too much going on right now. You can usually catch me on this channel Saturdays at 8 for Invisible Sun, but we are on break until the 16th. And I am pretty much on break from a lot of things this month, but working on some really fun projects. So hopefully we'll have something to share very soon.
Cool. Any thoughts about the game today?
Yes. So I really had no idea how best to prepare for this. So
this is the fun of this game. You don't.
I know. Yeah. Exactly. So
you just go for it.
Right. Yeah. If you prepare too much, it makes it harder.
Yeah.
It does, and I wasn't really thrilled about having to go last because it just sort of built up all the pressure. But yeah, no, it was great, and I am glad I still have enough pop culture references. Oh, I have nothing else to draw on. So
your story was really good, man.
And I got to drop the appropriate line in the appropriate place.
Yes.
Well, there it is. Yes, we knew it was coming. We just didn't know when. Well, let's we shall then finish off with our winner today, Dee.
Yay.
Oh, hey, y'all. You know me. I'm at Deirdre Donlan on Twitter, or Praxagorth Thesmophoria, as you see me hanging out in the Twitch chat. I had fun. I love this game. I love hanging out with these people and telling tales. I also love the Contessa Lucrezia Sofia Fioravanti. And
your sort of stream of consciousness tale was just amazing. It was perfect. Does she even breathe? No, she doesn't breathe. She just you're perfect Italian. That was brilliant. There's a technical term for that, which I can't.
It's called
remember.
Circular breathing.
No. For the ways Italians just speak and speak and speak and speak.
It's circular thought. It's like a frame tale and circular thought and whatever. It's whatever it is. But hey, I am Italian, so I do this naturally. It just kind of comes.
That explains it.
Yeah. You want me to tell a story? My father's family is Irish. My mother's family is Italian. How much time do I have? And what's your speed limit? But it I love this. This is a lot of fun. Thank you for having me, Jim. I love coming and playing with you guys. As for me, you can find me Mondays over on Role Players for some Age of Arcana fun, which is kind of like Mage Punk. D&D is great. And then on Tuesdays, I'm over on Wandering DM's channel for some Dark Matter fun, as we're playing through the end of the Illithid invasion. And if you think syphilis is hilarious, make sure you get vaccinated against Illithid. Just throwing that out there.
That's very important.
It is. And then Saturdays on Wandering DM's channel, I run the Vampire the Masquerade Nightfall in New York City, and it is a wonderful, dark, fun time with the Vamp Dads, their precocious art daughter, and the Gremlin stepson. So,
okay.
if you want to see how that turns out, you can join us. That's 1 p.m. Eastern on Saturdays, or everything goes up on YouTube on Wandering DM's channel, and watch things. Come join us. But things are happening. It'll be lots of fun, and I will see people at PAX this year. If you're coming to PAX Unplugged, I will see you at PAX.
Awesome. Yay! Cool. Well, thank you again so much for coming. That was delightful. The Contessa is delightful. All the characters were delightful. I loved them. I loved them so much.
I will freely acknowledge that I built the Contessa Lucrezia Sofia Fioravanti for a Castle Falkenstein game, which we nicknamed Flirting and Drinking on a train.
Wonderful. Well, that's all right.
The themes are very similar. It's the atmosphere is very similar.
Well, I too will admit the character of Lord Gregory was repurposed from a short story that I wrote and released. It's actually, strangely enough, that's the short story. If you look down below and click on it, it links right to that story on Amazon. So if you would like to read more about Lord Gregory Oxendine, it's
the latest fiction release one.
It is, yeah. And the latest fiction release has remained the same for months now. I need to get on that one of these days. I need to figure out how to chisel more hours into the day. That's really the important thing. Yes, so that's he's from that, and you can read all about his adventure on the moon of Titan in that one. Once again, one thing I will also mention is that I've known about this game for quite a long time, possibly almost as long as Ozzy has, but I haven't been able to play it. I picked this up in '98, I think it was,
that's the first edition.
At a little shop called Orc's Nest in London. I was amazed and enthralled when I saw it. I wanted badly to play it. And now finally I have. Only took me 21 years. But there we are. My desire to play this game can now legally drink in and of itself. That's how long it's been.
Yes.
So that's a good thing, I guess. That it's now. We waited until it was of age before we poured wine down its throat. But in the meantime, you can find me at OtherDoc on both Twitch and Twitter. My website is jimyesthatjim.com, where you can find my Geek Observation podcast and links to my various other podcasts, audio dramas, writings, and such. And in addition to the Lord Gregory link down below, I've got links to my website, Twitter, and YouTube channel. So this week, not a lot is happening, but there is one thing. This Tuesday, we are premiering our short campaign of Alas for the Awful Sea, which is a Powered by the Apocalypse game set in the 19th century in the British Isles and the crew of a ship. We're going to be doing our Session Zero stuff on Tuesday, getting our characters together, everyone's characters together, and we're kind of going to see where that goes. After that, the channel is going to be on a little bit of a hiatus because the following weekend, next weekend, I'm going to be at a local convention called Mace. It's in Charlotte, North Carolina. I'm going to be running several games there, including Lady Blackbird and The Quiet Year, and Everyone is John, where everyone plays John.
Everyone's me.
Yeah, everyone's you in that game. So everyone plays the Kobold Dude John in that game. So that's going to be happening that weekend, so I'm going to be away doing that. So then it'll be a couple episodes of Last for the Awful Sea in a row then, and then on the following weekend is when we get back to our regular stuff, which includes Invisible Sun on Saturday nights and one-shots on Sundays. So the next one-shot's going to be in 2 weeks, and that's going to be Scum and Villainy. That's going to be run by my friend of the channel, Brian. He's he's going to be stepping up to do that one shot. I'm very much looking forward to it. I've not actually played anything based on Blades in the Dark or the Forged into the Dark system, which I believe it is.
Yes, it is.
So it'll be interesting to see that. I haven't opened the sign-ups yet, but I'm going to do that soon, hopefully within the next day or so for that. And also for the one-shot coming at the end of the month, which will be 50 Fathoms, which I'll be running. That is a Savage Worlds game set in a sort of a fantasy pirate land type deal.
Right. Not Atlantis.
No, not Atlantis. No, but there are portals bringing people from places, including Earth, into this strange, fantastical realm with all manner of different intelligent races. Some of them based on sea creatures. So I've been wanting to try that one for a while. So we're gonna try one shot of it. So look for those sign-ups soon. Again, clicking the sign-up link or going to jimyesthatjim.com, clicking on game sign-up. As always, beginners are welcome. Well, when we hit the end card, I'm going to send a raid over to Christiana Ellis, who's been on this channel before. She is doing a 24-hour D&D Extra Life stream. She has been sitting and running D&D for the last day, I think. I think she's getting closer to the end now.
Madness.
So I'm going to go ahead and have us say hi to her. Feel free to hang on and say hi with us if you so desire. That, again, will be when we hit the end card. In the meantime, folks, thank you very much for watching. Take care, and I shall see you all of a sudden. Farewell.
Bye-bye.